Good evening, everyone. I think we might make a start with our event for this day of International Women and Girls in Science Day. Happy day. So I'll invite the other panelists and my co-MC Emily Fleece to undo their videos so that people can see how many of us there are and who's here, and we'll get started.
Hey Niamh, how you going?
I'm going very well. I've been enjoying the plethora of inspiring women being celebrated on social media today.
Me too.
It's one of my favorite days. How are you, Emily?
I'm doing great, thanks. I'm enjoying having an evening Zoom session. I have tried hard to avoid these sort of things, but I'm having a glass of wine with this one tonight, so I'm having a great time.
That's the way to do it. So a bit of housekeeping for those that are watching on the live stream. So you may have noticed we're actually in Zoom and you'll be watching the stream, but I will be receiving your comments and questions to pose to our panelists. You can ask them of myself, Emily, or our inspiring women in STEM. And when speaking, we'll keep our videos on, but when we're speaking, we'll unmute ourselves. When we're not, we'll be muted. Standard Zoom etiquette, I think, that we're all familiar with now. And the video will be posted on the Inspiring Tasmania YouTube channel after this. So it will be available for you to get around afterwards if you have to go and you miss some of our conversation. Annie, whenever you're ready, you can also join us with your video. Great, hello. Okay, so I'd like to begin today's event with an acknowledgement of the traditional owners of the land on which we are gathering, the Palawa people, the first scientists. Today we are meeting on Lutruwita, Tasmanian Aboriginal land, sea and waterways, but we may also be on other Aboriginal land. So I pay my respects to elders past and present, both here to the Aboriginal community, but also to wherever you are joining us from. And I'd like to say that I recognise a history of truth which acknowledges the impacts of invasion and colonisation upon Aboriginal people, resulting in the forcible removal from their lands. And I stand for a future that profoundly respects and acknowledges Aboriginal perspectives, culture, language and history, and would like a continued effort to fight for Aboriginal justice and rights to pave the way for a stronger future. So today's event is really just a little bit of a sneak peek at the Inspiring Women in STEM Fellows from Science in the Pub this year, because there's going to be an event with them later in the year as well. But today's what better day to meet some awesome women in STEM than on the International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So Emily, to kick us off, could you tell us a little bit about the program that you have set up and the fellows?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I think I'll just introduce Science in the Pub, which is the host of this, this fellowship. So Science in the Pub is a nonprofit, volunteer-run science engagement organization started by my partner, Andy Fleece, and myself, Emily Fleece, 6.5 years ago, first in Adelaide, in South Australia. And then a year later, we started one here in Tasmania when we moved down here. And the idea of Science in the Pub is to take, the incredible science that's being done in our Australian institutions and the amazing scientists that are doing it, take them out of academia and into the public where they can engage with people in the community and share their really fascinating research and stories with lots of people who are interested in them. So we did that, and it's been going really well. We host events the first Thursday of every month here in Hobart, and we bring 3 panelists to the pub and have them present on a given topic, really short presentations, about 10 to 12 minutes, and then they have sort of a panel discussion and answer questions from the audience. So in thinking about that, you're going to ask me about why we started this fellowship and this process for the Inspiring Women in STEM. I realize it actually really links well to Science in the Pub's mission, which is making science more inclusive. So that was the whole point of bringing it out of academia, where it can be really intimidating for some people to go there. They don't feel like they belong or like they're good enough to be there. And that's really not what science is meant to be about. It should be about competing ideas, not about competing people, and you know, welcoming one another so that you can develop those, you can hear different ideas and you can you know, think about them and have develop new ideas. And to do that in an inclusive way, I think is best for everybody, the people doing the science and the outcomes that you get from science. So that's, you know, part of the point of Science in the Pub. And in 2018, Andy and I were awarded the Vice Chancellor's Award for Outstanding Community Engagement for our efforts through Science in the Pub. And we were given a small amount of money as part of that award, $4,000 in Australia. And that was supposed to be to put towards sort of our professional development for Andy and I, which, you know, those of you who are here probably know it's not a lot of money to do something with. So it doesn't even cover the cost of open access fees for a lot of journals today. So, but we thought we wanted to do something that both, we wanted to split those funds in half and have half of them go towards supporting Science in the Pub events. And so we did that. We were able to start the Science in the Park event in 2019, which was wonderful. And we could bring science into the outdoors and take people on hikes and talk about nature and have lots of hands-on stuff for families. So that was really nice. And we were able to use that $2,000 and then leverage it to get, you know, some more donations and work with partners to put that event on. So we were really happy with that. And then the other half, we decided to put towards starting this fund and doing something to make science more inclusive and taking some action in that space. So I have been lucky to know some incredible women in science, both in the School of Natural Science where I've been based and across the university at UTAS, and actually throughout my history in other universities as well. And I don't know about you, Niamh, and the other the PhD students on the call, but sometimes in my day-to-day work life, I don't always feel inspired and, you know, motivated and excited about what I'm doing. I'm incredibly lucky to work in academia where I can, you know, choose a topic that I am passionate about, and I do get to work in that space, which is great. But publishing a paper or even getting a grant doesn't always give you that feeling of you're actually doing something good in the world and, you know, living a life of purpose, which I think, yeah, we all want to be doing. So this grant gives me that opportunity to meet these incredible, inspiring women, to hear their stories, to hear their passions about why they're doing what they do. And that makes me excited and feel, you know, inspired and purposeful again, and being able to contribute to their journeys and just to give them a microphone and some training about how to present and how to do science communication, and connecting them with some of the opportunities to raise their profile is an incredibly rewarding experience. So that's where it's come from.
I think that's awesome, and you've made like so many good points there that I think speak to a lot to who you and Andy are as people and the values that you bring to science communication. And I think that this fellowship's a really like the start of something really exciting. And it's amazing that when you were so generous once you won an award, you're like, oh, let's just give it away and put it back into the community. And I think that's just sums you two up.
Well,
pretty much.
See, it's not giving it away. We get a lot back from doing it, obviously. So.
Yeah. So could you please introduce each of the fellows this year? Oh, I see that you have, oh, actually, I need to remind people as well, if you're watching and you have any questions, just comment them on the Facebook Live link and I will receive them from the wonderful moderator that we have, who's part of the That's What I Call Science radio show team, which I will talk more about in a little bit because I realized I haven't said anything about it. Mibu Fisher is monitoring that. And also shout out to Kelsey Pickard for monitoring the live stream. Emily, you were about to say something.
I was, and then I'm going to hijack the structure here a little bit. I was just going to say I want to acknowledge that obviously this fellowship doesn't happen. It's not just me doing this. So it was the Science in the Pub committee that pulled together this idea and really made it happen. So obviously Andy Fleece, that's my co-founder, you know, and life partner. But that's besides the point. And also the rest of the people that we work with. So Penny Jones and Tessa Smith and Marion Charlier and Lachlan Tegert and Alana DeLuca have been helping out and help facilitate this. And also, you know, we started it the first year with some funds from the Vice Chancellor's Award, but that was only, they expired at the end of 2019. So we fundraised throughout last year to be able to put on this year's fellowship and grant. And so we got a wonderful community response. We got lots of donations from the community. And we also got donations from the School of Technology, Environments and Design and College of Science and Engineering from UTAS. And a nice donation from Zara Marius's family. Her family does this incredible thing where they all put in money to this pot throughout the year, and then the family decides where to donate it at the end of the year. And so they decided to put it towards this fellowship, which was a wonderful thing. And I absolutely am excited to present our recipients for this year, which I was debating hijacking the process, Niamh, but I'll give you some control over it. I was going to say, having just explain sort of the structure of this fellowship, it seems like a good bridge for you to talk a little bit about, that's what I call science. Do you want to do that now, or you want to introduce that later, since you are hosting the event?
I'm just, the bringer of people together. So I think that, the reason I'm here is I think you and I share a passion for providing a platform and a voice that celebrates women and diversity as a whole in science, technology, engineering, and maths. And a shameless plug is that in 2019, I founded That's What I Call Science, formerly Now That's What I Call Science, which is a radio show and podcast with a women-only team that produces all of the content from start to finish, including planning the episodes, producing, and as Olly would know well, because she's part of our team, editing the episodes. And it's just a really wonderful experience where we're essentially putting women at the heart of the conversation around science, technology, engineering, and maths, and having women experts drive the conversation, I think, is quite unique in the media. And we also have a weekly half-hour episode where we go into quite a lot of detail. I think that's our goal, is to really break down science content into its minutiae, but in a really accessible way, because when you hear science reported, it's often 10-minute snippets and it doesn't really get into a lot of the crucial details that I really enjoy. But it's been a really wonderful experience for me starting out my career to work with so many other women who are at the beginning of their career. And I think something that I'm interested to focus on as I develop is the fact that there's so many of us now, and we're all passionate and enthusiastic and bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. But we know that women don't progress to leadership in STEM at the same rates as their male peers. And in fact, although there's pretty similar percentages of graduates in a lot of STEM fields between the genders, there's only less than 12% of women in leadership positions in STEM as of 2016. So that might be outdated. So I think events like this are really important. I think that's why Science in the Pub and That's What I Call Science are important. And I'm really keen to just rally around efforts that are coming from the grassroots local communities like yours to celebrate women and provide a platform to diverse people, because that's going to improve STEM in the whole. So without further ado, let's actually hear from our inspiring women fellows. So if you can introduce them, please, Emily.
I would love to introduce our speakers for tonight, or our panelists for tonight. So in no particular order, because all three are our fellows this year, we have Olly Dove, and Olly is a PhD student at the Institute of Marine and Antarctic Studies. She's waiting for you there. And Olly is also, as Niamh mentioned, a current co-host and editor of the podcast, That's What I Call Science. And I think her background right now is a real background, not a virtual background. She's out in the field, literally in a field, joining us for this event, doing some field work. So thank you so much for joining us. And with the funding that comes along with this fellowship, Olly has been able to purchase videography equipment for creating video series about the flora and fauna of Tasmania. She'll be distributing those to schools in Australia and back home, where she's from in the UK, hoping to spark children's interest in wildlife. She'll also use that equipment to further extend the media outreach and impact of the That's What I Call Science show. Next in line there, we have Nneka Orji. Nneka is a medical doctor, a health economist at the Federal Institute of Health, and a PhD student at the Menzies Institute of Medical Research in Tasmania. She's just started long distance due to current travel restrictions, and she's joining us right now live from Nigeria. I think it's very early morning, so thank you as well for being so flexible. And she's also, on top of all those things, a mother of 4. Through this grant, Nneka has developed a community-based mentorship program in the suburban community of Abuja, Nigeria. The mentorship program will boost girls' self-esteem and aspirations in STEM fields and provide them with education and supplies for menstrual health and hygiene to remove a major barrier to their full participation in school. Nneka hopes that through these presentations and mentorship, she can inspire the next generation of Nigerian girls and women in STEM. And last but not least, we have Annie Nguyen. She's a PhD student in the School of Natural Sciences at the University of Tasmania. Annie witnessed firsthand how a lack of English speaking ability can be a barrier to higher paying jobs. And she's since taught English as well as the Python computer language to youth in different parts of the world. Annie had plans to teach at the Natamuse Junior Academy in the Loitokitok district in Kenya before accepting her PhD scholarship studying the drivers of biodiversity here in Australia. With this grant, she has purchased science and maths books written in English for children in grades 5 to 8 at the Natamuse Junior Academy. She hopes that learning math and science in English will open up educational and economic opportunities for those students and disrupt the cycle of poverty that exists in that part of Kenya. So with that, I'd like to welcome our panelists for tonight.
Wow.
So we have
it's just Finn. It's just your introductions speak for themselves. You're a very inspiring bunch. So if I could kick off, I'd really like to know a little bit more about what you're studying and why you were passionate to pursue that as your PhD topic, if that's okay. And I'll go in reverse order and start with Annie, if that's all right. So Annie, can you tell us a little bit more about your PhD topic and why you're pursuing biodiversity?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. The PhD topic that I'm working on is on biodiversity and endemism of forests. So endemism just means something that occurs in a restricted range. On forests that occur on volcanic soil. And so throughout the Cenozoic, Australia migrated north, and as it migrated north, it might have moved over a mantle hotspot, and then as a result of this, it could have hosted an environment that allowed for higher biodiversity and potentially endemism.
That sounds very interesting. So why were you particularly interested in pursuing that as a PhD topic? Because I mean, I'm not going to lie, you mentioned quite a few things there that have never occurred to my brain to even think about, like the moving of Australia, and so that would have been when the ice caps, when the tectonic plates were moving and when the things melted. When would that have been? Like what time are we thinking about?
We're talking very long time periods. So Australia used to be much further south, and we used to be connected to Antarctica, part of a previous landmass called Gondwana, and that used to have parts of India and part of South America connected to it as well. And Australia started drifting away from Antarctica, possibly around the 100 million years, but it took us quite a long time to completely tore off away from Gondwana. And so my study project will look at when there's a gateway, a body of water that opens away from Antarctica, between Antarctica and Australia. So probably around 45 million years to present, when we started really drifting away from Antarctica.
Wow.
And that's when, sorry.
You keep going. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, and that's pretty much when we start to see Australian endemics, because we, before that period of time, we have a lot of plants that are, because of the land masses being interconnected, we have a lot of plants from South America. So because we have eucalypts and proteas that are in the same family in Africa, but after the rifting, we get our own species that speciate, essentially, completely change and become endemic to Australia after we rift.
That's amazing. I mean, it makes sense now that you say it, but that is how we have endemic species, but I'd never thought of it before. So what made you want to pursue this topic in particular as part of your PhD studies? Because a PhD is a big commitment. So yeah, I'm imagining you're pretty passionate about it.
Absolutely. So when I go to a party and people ask me what do you do, I say I'm a tree hugger. So I'm very passionate about plants and trees, and I think that the forests where the plants are most biodiverse are around the tropics. So you've got the Amazon and you've got the Congo region, and that's where the tropical forests are the most diverse, as well as in Southeast Asia. But the problem with this is at the same time that they're most biodiverse, they're also not at the top of priority lists. So a lot of countries trade economic value versus biodiversity value. So say for Southeast Asia, one of the biggest problems they have is the orangutans are going into extinction because of the palm oil. We're clearing forests because there's value to plant palm oil, and so it's a trade, it's an economic trade-off. And so what I'm hoping to do later on after my PhD is to look at ways that we can identify issues and why or how countries are using these highly biodiverse forests, and then proposing alternatives so that we do conserve what we do have.
And Annie, you are dealing with these really big timescales and really large geographic areas, so lots of data, and so you use pretty high-tech methods for managing all of that data and making sense of that data, right? So you use some IT and artificial intelligence methods to deal with that stuff. How have you found it being a female of color in that particular field? You know, do you find a lot of allies there, or do you find yourself often in a minority in those sorts of conferences?
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely a minority. Just because it's part of this. It's a minority because I suspect, have in the last 20 years or so have encouraged more boys to go into technology. We provide boys with more opportunity to progress towards IT and so forth. So I have started my own project to try to encourage more females into learning programming languages, because it is an area where women do make up, I think, the minority. I had a statistic somewhere, but it's 10-15%.
Yeah, so tell us about that. Yeah, so that action that you've taken and the program that you've started to encourage more girls into learning computer programming languages. Is that it?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So in December 2019, I came back to Brisbane from Berlin. I lived in Berlin for a year, and it's a fantastic dynamic environment in Berlin, and there's a lot of startup companies and there's a lot of meetups, but Berlin is a massive city of 3.5-4 million people, and so there was a lot of opportunity. As soon as I came back to Brisbane, I noticed that there was a much smaller market in terms of in the meetup space, and there wasn't weekly classes that were extremely interactive, and I was very keen on learning Python. And so noticing that there was this lack in classes that are allowed for people to interactively learn, I established beginners Python support sessions. So we've now changed to beginners Python and machine learning, because half of the element is now machine learning. And I am supported by 2 fantastic volunteers, Tim and Arun, and we run every Tuesday. The first Tuesday of the month is for absolute beginners who have absolutely no experience in Python, who just want to learn Python. Just for the record, anyone who doesn't know what Python is, it's a language just like any other language, but it's a language that you can use to communicate with computers so that you can do absolutely anything. Google uses Python, Instagram uses Python, NASA uses Python, robots use Python. So it's everywhere you look. You just don't realize that it's there. So it's a computer language that is really easy to pick up. And I do want women to realize that they can do anything. They just need motivation. And I provide that, that beginner step for them to get into and find out what they can do with Python.
Yeah, I love that. And the workshops that you run are for anyone, right? They're not targeted to women. They're just for anyone who's interested in learning and who doesn't have a background. So again, building that inclusivity, that, and that empowerment that anyone can do this. You just have to engage and find the teachers, find the people.
That's right. Absolutely. It's absolutely free. We do it live online. So you don't even have to be in Brisbane. You just have to find us on the meetup page and join us at the time on Brisbane time.
So people would, if they were interested in doing that, how they would find it on meetup.com. Is that right?
That's right. Yep. So we're beginners, Python, and machine learning.
Awesome. And I do want to talk a little more about how that relates to the way you're using the grant this year and your interest in English language and teaching people English. But I want to introduce and talk to some of our other panelists first, and then we'll come back to that, I think. Sure. So if it's all right, I'll flip over to Olly, because Annie talked a lot about biodiversity and looking at plants and animals across Australia, and you're obviously out in the field right now in amongst that biodiversity and working with birds. So can you tell us this same sort of question? Tell us about your PhD project and why you came to study that subject.
Yeah, sure. I hope my my internet is good enough. It might be a bit glitchy because, as you said, I'm out in the field. But thanks for having me here, and thanks to everyone that's watching. But I am out on Wedge Island at the moment in southeast Tasmania. So we're not actually that far from Hobart, but I'm here with my two fantastic field assistants. Just at time, one's going to pop in for a little wave, I think. There's
Hi,
Peter.
everyone.
But I study the foraging behavior of little penguins and short-tailed shearwaters. So this is a fake little penguin, but this is my study species. Shout out to Melbourne Airport as well. But what I do is that I attach GPS biologgers to the birds, and I study where they're going in the local area to feed and what sort of environmental variables is affecting that. And the way I got interested in that topic and why I came to be here in Tasmania is because I've always loved animals. Sort of when I was 2 years old, I ran away from my parents and they found me cuddling a sheep. So I was always going to work with animals, that was inevitable. But when I did my master's degree, I studied taxonomy and biodiversity, which means the science of evolution, evolutionary trees and things. But I went to Madagascar to study plovers. The plovers in Madagascar are much smaller than the plovers you would think of here in Australia. But apologies for the wind as well. I hope you can hear me okay as well, I'm guessing. Okay.
We can hear you loud and clear. Yet, so I appreciate the wind and the rattly camping sounding equipment. It's very authentic sounding.
Yeah. Oh, good. That's good. We're under a gazebo at the moment because it is spitting a little. So, yeah. But when I was out in Madagascar, I got to study the plovers, and I just absolutely fell in love with the fieldwork lab and working with birds. I think they're absolutely fascinating. I think they're the coolest group of animals to work with. You get them in every environment, and in particular, I now work with seabirds, which are just extraordinary animals. So my shearwaters that I work with, they live here, but they travel down to Antarctic waters to feed, and then in their non-breeding season, they go past Japan and up to the Northern Hemisphere. And it's just an incredible, they're only this big, and yet they travel so far. So they're just absolutely amazing study. And the reason why I wanted to study here in Tasmania is because during my undergraduate degree, I studied abroad in Brisbane, actually, funnily enough, another Brisbane story, but I absolutely love Australia and love being here. So I really wanted to combine studying birds with coming back to Australia. So that brought me here to Wedge Island.
That's awesome. So Olly, do you have any interesting field stories about, maybe the realities of field work, or, some of the cute and cuddly sides of it too, whichever you'd prefer.
I guess I could go very much to more the grim side of fieldwork in that. So I've been here for 2 weeks so far, and I've got another 2 weeks to go. And I'm living in a tent. There's no showers, there's no toilet. We have the ocean. So there's sort of, it's as grotty and grim as you can imagine from that. We can have a shower every few days though, which sort of keeps the grottiness to a minimum, which is good. But in terms of the cute and cuddly stories, so we have the colonies of the penguins in shearwaters overlap. And it's really cool because when penguin chicks get to a certain age, they come and sit for their parent outside the burrow. So penguins and shearwater adults come back at nighttime to feed their chicks. So all my work takes place at nighttime practically, and I have to walk around the colony. And it's really cool because because I'm here for a month, there's some penguin chicks that I get to see grow up over that month, and they get bigger and bigger, and they lose more of their fluffiness and become, fledglings. And it's really amazing to get to see that sort of in live time.
Can I just stay with you for one more question, Olly, and then I want to ask some questions of Nneka. You've got really involved in science communication over your academic career, and certainly here in Tasmania. What's been the driver of that for you? What made you passionate about communicating science?
Oh, that's such a good question. So when I was back at school, I used to love watching wildlife shows myself. I used to watch Deadly 60 and Michaela Strachan type shows. Absolutely loved it. And I've always loved taking scientific theory and fact and converting it into a way that's enjoyable. So in my bachelor's degree, for a project, I was studying avian flight, and I wrote a children's story about a pigeon learning to fly. And that was sort of the first time I engaged in science communication, and I got to take it to a school and tell the kids, and because it was a fun story, but they actually got to learn something about how birds fly. And since then, I've just tried to sort of get involved with it as much as possible. So as you both mentioned, I am part of That's What I Call Science now, which I've really enjoyed being on. It's been a great opportunity to I'm on the editing side. I'm in the editing team, which means I get to listen to the episodes and sort of fine tune them. But I get to see a really broad range of science each week and get to help deliver that to audiences, because it would be very easy for me to live in a marine ecology bubble and sort of not diversify my experience outside of that. But through That's What I Call Science, I get to see all these different cool scientific things that's going on in Tasmania. And I love being able to then help share that with people.
And we're very glad that you do.
Yes, we're very lucky to have Olly in our team. She's awesome. Yeah. And always so enthusiastic. This is not like just a tonight thing. That is just Olly's resting state.
I've seen some of her video podcasts that she has about wildlife around Australia. So it does seem to be the resting state of Olly.
Yeah.
I'd like to flip over to Nneka now, if that's all right, and hear a little bit about your journey. So you've had an incredible academic career. You're a medical doctor, you've become a health economist, you've studied around the world, you're now working in health policy in Nigeria. Can you tell us a little about that journey and why health has been such an important topic for you?
Okay, thank you very much, Emily. Can you all hear me? Okay, so greetings from Nigeria. Is early morning here, but yeah, so I'm happy to be part of this discussion. So growing up, I've always loved the sciences, but of course with that little scare that you cannot do it, it's difficult. But I managed, with the encouragement of my family to pull through. I became a medical doctor. I've worked in clinics, I've worked in rural areas, and and went on to work for the federal government. I had my first stint with women and children on HIV and AIDS. I've done a lot around early infant diagnosis of HIV and AIDS and preventing mother-to-child transmission of HIV and AIDS. And around that time, I started noticing that, look, within the health community, we have people who are underserved or they are not getting enough. And so that, prompts my interest around population health, not just sitting in the clinic and attending to individuals. I needed to make that general impact, within the underserved community. So I tried to look at an area that would give me that opportunity. It was public health, and then it was health economics, because even though they are underserved, what is causing that? A lot of that had to do with the cost of assessing the care. So I needed to look at the economics of assessing care. And so I had the opportunity of getting the Australian Awards in Africa scholarship to come to the University of Adelaide to get a master's in health economics and health policy. So that was a very big opening for me, and I transitioned from my small world of attending to very few people to having a broader horizon of healthcare delivery, and the economics of it. And then when I came back to my country, health economics was a new area. Nobody understood what I was talking about. So, and then being a female, it is basically a male-dominated field. You have to do a lot to prove yourself. So, I got onto that, and I think somehow I made it. Up till now, I'm still the only female health economist in the Ministry of Health, and currently, I work for a Minister of Health as his technical assistant, and within his technical team, I'm still also the only female. So that's a lot of so that's a lot of barriers to break. And even in the course of my work, I've also noticed that, look, I still needed to do more. And then considering the dynamics of our dwindling resources and the fact that there are still more underserved communities to engage and reach out to. So the idea of having a broader knowledge base, a broader horizon within my field, and then for me to also to continue to have that edge to make the impact, I thought of having a PhD in health economics, because it is still an area that, it's not yet well understood in my climb here. And I needed to be well grounded for me to sell my paradigm, sell my ideology, and all of that. And so I also got the scholarship to come back to Australia. Of course, Australia being an inclusive society where you have that leverage to explore, without being judged, without being, I don't really, not like where I have to walk the extra mile to prove myself or to have access to the kind of materials or knowledge base that I require to make impact within my community. And not just that, I also needed to look for an area that will align with what I would do back home, looking at an underserved community or disease area that will help me to get what I was looking for. And so my PhD work is around the health economics of an epidemiology of myalgic encephalitis and chronic fatigue syndrome. So for me, it suits very well with my situation back home. That community is underserved, and a lot is still unknown around the disease area, around the out-of-pocket health expenditure, and all of those dynamics, the prevalence and all of that. So that's why I was happy to take on that area of study. And I think so far it's leading me to the areas that I had always looked forward to working, because some of the results I'm getting from my early studies, some of the experiences, I'm having to apply it within my system, especially now having to respond to the COVID-19 intervention within my country, because working for a minister, I have to advise him every now and then on how to articulate strategies for all of the interventions. And so that's me. Thank you.
Well, it's a lot, you know, it's an incredible, an amazing pathway that you've had to have achieved all of that, the becoming a doctor and doing the master's and doing another PhD and becoming an advisor to the health minister. It's amazing. And you've juggled all of that while raising a family. Is there anything any advice you want to give about managing that delicate balance, you know, without going insane?
Right. So it's around being focused and being determined. And so looking at all that I have, all of the distractions and all of that, like I said, back here, as a female, it's not easy to work in a male-dominated environment, in a male-dominated field. And then the fact that you really have to keep up, you have to walk the extra mile to keep focused. So it's around being focused and being determined. And so that's why I elected to speaking and mentoring young school girls to articulate how they interact with the distractions from the environment, with the distraction from societal norms. You have to make a family, you have to prove yourself, you have to keep your family intact, and you still also have to contribute meaningfully to the society. So I've also got a lot of family support, you know, for me to be able to achieve all of this. Thank you.
Nneka, that's just so impressive that you've just essentially smashed all the glass ceilings, like is what it sounds like, in a system where it would be really challenging to do that. And I wonder if you could talk about like some of that. You must have phenomenal amounts of self-belief and self-determination. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you navigated pursuing those ambitions, despite being in a despite having to walk the extra mile. I mean, I think that's something that I love the way you say that, having to walk the extra mile, because I think that's well shown in the evidence, and most of the people listening will be familiar with the exhaustion that comes with that, of, you know, having to not only be as good as everyone else, but as a woman having to be that much better just to be considered in the same league. So I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you have persevered and made the very strategic decisions to pursue your ambition.
Yeah, thank you. So really, I think what I must make clear here is, in all of this, I still have my low moments. I'm human. It hasn't always been like all fantastic, but I think the ability to have the courage to manage my low moments. There are sometimes I feel like I'm not going as fast as I should go. I'm not doing as well as I should. But I have this self principle of not waiting for anybody to authenticate my effort. So I am my own judge. That is very helpful for me, because when I look up to people to certify me, to judge and say, hell, you're doing well, for me, what if I don't get a positive response? That will diminish my morale. So I try to encourage myself to say, look, what do you want? I pen down what I want, and I give myself timelines. So I just keep focused and work towards my goal. I know there are distractions here and there, but on my head, what keeps me going is, look, you have a target to reach. You have a target to reach. Don't mind all of the distraction. And like I said, being the only female health economists, you are reminded every day by the male folk that, look, you can't make this decision for us. You're a female. I get that all of the time. But the edge I have is I'm scientific. I have scientific and reproducible evidence to say it's not about sentiments. There's a science behind this pathway. There's a science behind this decision. And we can juxtapose that with what is happening in other countries. So I get to read a lot. And then in terms of social life, because I have to keep up with the trend, I practically have little or no social life. But that's fine. For me, it's helping me, keep track on my progress. So, and that's how I have managed being my own judge, keeping focused on the target, and then also allowing myself to go through the low moments when they come, because I can't shelve them aside. They help to build me, and I encourage myself, even though other people encourage me, but I try to encourage myself because my own encouragement matters more to me than somebody else's or any, And I've also, within our society here, I have a number of, high profile and high achieving women that I also look up to. Sometimes I do them emails. Sometimes I put a phone call through if I have access. And so sometimes I get the super you go girl encouragement from them. So that's also working for me. So and
I will reiterate that super you go girl because I can tell you that from the social media channel too, everyone's just like major inspo happening here. I really loved the way you said that you have to have courage to go through the low moments. And I think particularly in fields maybe where you're isolated, which isn't, I don't have that experience. There's lots of women in medical research. But I wonder, Olly or Annie, maybe if we go first to you, Annie, what strategies have you used to navigate being underrepresented in your area and, persevering with STEM? Because, we know that not everybody does.
I think, as Nneka said, it's recognizing your own goals. You don't need the validation of other people saying, good job, you're doing a good job, because as long as you know that you're doing a good job, that is how you progress. And I definitely think just know what you want. And I think I do the exact same thing that Nneka does. I write down my own goals and I go, this is what I need to, these are the skills that I need in order to achieve what I want to achieve. And then I go out and try to achieve these skills. And like with Python, with the beginner's Python, I tried to get out there and tried to find ways of learning it interactively, because that's how I learn. I learn by doing. And I found that there wasn't anything available. And when you hit an obstacle, you can either turn away or you can do something about it. And I think being active, being engaging at whatever the problem is, find solutions to it, find ways around it. So when you hit an obstacle, just keep going, just break through it.
That's awesome. Thanks, Annie. And I think, the positive, proactive attitude that you and Nneka have described is really admirable. Olly, I wonder if you could talk about some of the things that have supported you to pursue STEM, because I know you and I have talked a lot in the past about like mentorship and kind of feeling like pursuing science is a bit daunting. Which, like, spoilers, because I know that from insider knowledge. But I wonder if you could talk a little bit about some of the things that have supported you to keep going.
Yeah, it's a big question, because zoology is a really interesting one in terms of when you're at bachelor's, it's very predominantly female cohort that you're with. There's, I think in my zoology degree, there was maybe 3 guys in our course, but then by the time you get to professorship, it's completely switched. So you're having a lot of women start out in zoology and natural sciences in general, but then by the time you're getting to the very higher tiers, it's completely, that's just evaporated the mix. And I think having a mentor at a higher level, it's the sort of the visibility of having a woman above you or someone that you can see it's possible. And it's especially if you're able to get in touch with someone and have that that one-on-one mentorship, not just, I mean, Twitter is brilliant for science. You can sort of engage with other scientists and you can see all these wonderful female scientists. But then if you're able to get in touch with sort of an ECR, so an early career researcher, and just as a PhD, just having, so I have currently one postdoc that I'm in contact with, and she's really encouraging in that sense to be able to support me in that sense. Sorry, it's just started to rain here. And yeah, I think I'm just going to quickly move my table in from the rain. Sorry.
That's okay, Olly. You take care of getting them to the dry. Emily, I can see you've unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I just was going to follow up on that, that you guys all have flagged sort of the importance of mentorship and finding mentors and having mentors. And I'm just wondering about you guys being mentors. And, you know, that's sort of part of this process, hopefully, is connecting with some people and youth in the community that, you know, can look up to you and see the pathway that you've had and the journey you've had and see that it's possible for them. So can you, I'm going to ask you each a little bit about what you have planned for this grant and for this fellowship. And so just so the viewers know, as awardees of the fellowship this year, it comes along with a small pot of funding for the fellows to put towards engaging with youth in their community about STEM. And everyone has very different ideas of how to do that. So I guess I'll start with Nneka, and I've introduced each of your sort of project ideas, but can you talk about how, since yours specifically is a mentorship program, can you talk about how you've started that program, how you've gone about finding the girls to mentor, and why you've chosen the specific type of mentorship program that you have?
Okay. Thank you, Emily. So just a little bit of background. Before now, because of my experiences and the kind of work I do, I've had a lot of people coming, you know, to maybe informally, you know, being mentored by me. So I've had to work with a lot of young people, both males and females. And most recently, two of my mentees got PhD positions, one at the Oxford, and then the other most recently at Emory University. So when I kicked off the mentorship program in a chosen community high school here for girls, I've been speaking to those girls, and then, you know, in one of our engagements, it was an opportunity for me to take this young people to the venue for them to also, you know, engage with the young girls. So I elected to speak to young girls about building their self-confidence, you know, for them to go into STEM, the sciences. But I needed something that will be very close to their heart, something that they will be very interested in, that will help us connect, because I needed to build that trust first before they accept me and I accept them. So I elected to talk to them about their menstrual hygiene, you know, which would help them to build their confidence, to discover themselves, and, you know, get encouraged and see other people that have, you know, gone into the sciences and how confident they are and all of that. I had mentioned earlier that Nigeria is a place where as a lady, as a woman, you really have to work hard to get accepted, to prove yourself, to get into enviable positions, and even the sciences. And so because these girls, they have inadequate or little knowledge about their menstrual hygiene, about keeping clean, what to do, and all of that, it affects their self-esteem. And so they are never available for classes, they're never available to take the sciences, they're not confident enough to engage and be bold to ask questions. So I've been talking to them about their menstrual hygiene, what is even menstruation? When you see it, should you get scared? Who should you talk to? How should you talk to the person? How should you take care of yourself? What should you do? You know, how and what would you use to take care of yourself? And it was quite, we've been having quite an interactive session, and over time they are now bold enough to say, oh, look at our challenges, these are the reasons why we can't talk to our female teachers. They seem to be hostile, they seem not to be accommodating. And in one of the sessions I had to invite the female house mistress to come and sit down and be part of the discussion, and we were able to have an arrangement on, okay, so you make the pads available to them at this time. And another issue that came up is the fact that they're supposed to take their bath at least 2 or 3 times in a day when they are menstruating as part of keeping clean. And then they don't have access to water. Not because there is no water in the school compound, but because where they will get the water is far away from their hostels. So, and then the teachers will not allow them to move at a certain time to go and get the water. So we talked about that, and we had an agreement on how things should change, you know, during those times. And they've also been confident to say, look, because we're not clean, we don't sleep at night because you want to keep awake such that the flow does not stain the bed, so that the flow does not, you know, drip and get to the corner of your mate and all. So we talked about all of that and how they could handle that. And by the time I was seeing them for the next session, they were all happy and bubbly and you know, sharing their experiences on how they are able to, you know, handle all of those challenges. And then we've also moved on to, you know, talking about their science subjects, what questions they have. So for last week, there's some of them that are preparing for what we call WAEC, that is the last exams in high school, took them on biology, and, you know, did some revision with them. And then some of those, my colleagues that came around, you know, will also be taking them on mathematics and some other subjects. So basically, you know, being practical with the mentorship program, you know, not just connecting with them on menstrual hygiene, but also looking at other issues, you know, that could affect their self-confidence and them taking care of themselves. We've also been discussing on that. And even the female teachers are very excited. They come and sit. They are also having to learn a lot on how to engage the girls, because they are a bit strict, the girls are not confident enough to engage with them or to open up and say what their problems are. So we've been able to break that barrier such that they can have good relationships with them, and they can even organize extra classes for them such that they can prepare for their exams, you know, feeling confident that they would do well. And then one of the things we also did was in our last session with them, when we were looking at the biology subjects, I tried to pose some questions, and those of them that were able to answer the questions, they were outstanding. I encouraged them with a little cash award, just to also encourage the other ones to be bold and speak up and, you know, engage in classes and perform well. So basically that's what I have been doing. And in our next engagement, I have told them that the Minister for Women Affairs in Nigeria is a woman. We will be bringing her to the girls such that, you know, they can see somebody who is high up there coming to speak to them and encourage them. And we also hope to bring other high-level women who are in high offices and in sciences, especially from the engineering field, to come speak to them. Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, wow, that's it.
I love that you're breaking down taboo while also building up confidence and like seeing that as a pathway to promoting education.
Yeah, and I was going to say it would have such an incredible impact on the girls involved in the mentorship program, both from the, what they're learning about hygiene and that education, but also just through meeting you and meeting the other female ministers of health and having that getting to engage with you as mentors would have incredible effects for them, and I imagine flow-on effects. I was curious, you don't have to do anything beyond what you're doing. It is amazing. But do you have thoughts on how that sort of program could be expanded? I mean, you do, work with people in the Ministry of Health, and there would be so many girls in Nigeria would benefit from that kind of education, at least, if not mentorship. Are there opportunities to do that sort of thing?
Yes, so there are opportunities. Like I said, that's why I'm bringing the Minister for Women Affairs, because she is in charge of women, girl, children, and gender issues. And then in the Ministry of Health, there is also a department that handles adolescent health and engagement. So I have strategically, engaged with these people to be part of the intervention, such that we can sustain the engagement even beyond this community engagement. And beyond going to their schools, I know they don't have access to phones in their school. That's why I'm also engaging their female teachers. So once in a while, they come together. So we have the tracking app, that they have access to, they can use to track their menstrual cycle. And then there is also this booklet that we'll be giving to them by next week that has career path, how you can choose career path. It's like a booklet, so they can read it. We'll talk to them about it, but in our absence, they read through the booklet and, get to know what subjects they have to do, what exams they have to do to choose if they need to go through certain career path. And beyond that also, using that tracker, a few female colleagues of mine, we've come together to develop a mentorship app that we can use to engage them when they are on holidays, when they have access to phone, and for those of them that are going to leave high school very soon. So we'll use that app to ask them questions and also make an opening for them to throw up their questions. And for those of them that are outstanding, that we'll follow them through to introduce them to certain opportunities and involve them in other community projects, in the Ministry of Health, that will also help them to build their confidence and spur their interest around the sciences. So that's what we have developed, and hoping that we will kick off with that as soon as the COVID restriction permits, because right now there are still lots of restrictions within the system. So that's why we're using the app to engage with them, so that we don't have to have physical contact with them most of the time. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point, Nneka. And you've developed this mentorship program, and you have that one-on-one relationship with some of those girls, and it would be incredibly impactful for them. We do live now in COVID times and have virtual capacity. So of course, engaging one-on-one isn't the only way to mentor people and to inspire people. So I want to flip over to, I'll start with Olly and then go to Annie as well, and ask you guys about what your plans are for, program you're implementing with the grant, and how you're connecting with youth. What your plans are to mentor them and inspire them. Olly, starting with you.
Sure. So, yeah. Okay, cool. I think I dropped out for a moment back there. So hopefully the internet's now clear now that the rain's a bit lessened. But as you mentioned, I've been able to buy some videography equipment. So it's sort of also linked to COVID in a sense, in that the UK is not having a good time at all with COVID. They're in and out of lockdowns. And so a lot of teachers and parents have had to adapt to a new lifestyle and a new way of teaching and engaging their children. Child at the moment in the UK must just be really hard. You're stuck, you can't really explore, you can't get out and see friends. So I'm hoping with the new equipment that I have, I'm going to be making a video series of the flora and fauna of here in Tasmania, starting with
Oh, we just lost Olly there for a second, but I can see her rejoining. You just dropped out at the point where you were like, starting with. So, you know, it was just creating suspense.
Oh, am I back?
You are
Starting
back
with-
and I can hear you. So it only cut out at that like, and I'm now
Okay.
gonna start out with, and then it was just building suspense, like it was smooth.
Okay, cool. I can only see you and no one else, but I'll continue. Yeah, starting with here on Wedge. So we've got some amazing animals living here on Wedge. We've got the penguins, and we got the shearwaters, and we've got wedge eagles and white-bellied sea eagles, and we've also got a whole seal colony. So I'm going to be making this video series of short videos that I've been in contact with a few teachers back in the UK, and it'll be something fun and enjoyable for the kids to be able to do during this time. And I think it's really, what I really sort of want to inspire from this is to keep maintaining their interest in the natural world, because they'll be a bit cut off it at the moment. So one thing I'd also like to do is cover invertebrates. Australia is great for having some scary things. I have one of the fieldwork stories I could have mentioned earlier was that I once, last year when I was Wedge, I was getting dressed and I actually had a scorpion inside my shirt, which is not ideal. Yeah. But hopefully if I sort of get kids excited about invertebrates and things, then they can go out to their garden, and even if they can't leave their home or garden, they can still sort of enjoy the natural environment that they are able to access. And building from that, I'll just hope to engage them in that sense. And that's the natural sciences side of what I'm hoping to do. And on the other side, briefly mentioned that I'm hoping to sort of help engage new audiences for That's What I Call Science. So we're a podcast show, so we're primarily audio based. So to do some behind the scenes stuff and to do some extra video content with our guests would be really good to sort of engage a new field of people, because sometimes it's hard to get new people interested into a podcast, and sometimes behind the scenes are just really fun, especially with young audiences. So the Instagram generation, short, quick, fun videos really get people interested, and if we can make those short videos about a scientific topic, then that can hook them in to then get interested and follow that up further.
That sounds awesome. And I love that you are really focused on making accessible resources for young children, because you also last year were kind of spearheaded our first foray of That's What I Call Science into video when we did the Working on Water mini series in collaboration with the Royal Society of Tasmania, supported by Inspiring Tasmania. And then you also led the development of the booklet of activities for school age children. So I think it's great that you're trying to make things that are always available and resources that are super user friendly for young people. So Annie, I wonder if you could, I'm conscious that we technically said we'd finish at 8:30, but I mean, it's online. So Annie, I was wondering if you could tell me what your plans are with the grant that you received.
And I'm going to back that up just a tad, because I know what you've done with it. And I'm going to ask you to start with a little bit of history. We've talked about your passion and the work that you do teaching people coding language. And so I want to ask you about why you think learning English language is important as a gateway into science and to good paying jobs, how you came about to feel that way, and then what you're doing about it.
Sure. I used the grant to purchase maths and science books in English, but to take a step back, why English? And that comes back to, I'm very fortunate to be bilingual. My background is Vietnamese, and my mom only speaks Vietnamese. She did take TAFE courses to improve her English, but it is a barrier towards higher paying jobs. And I do notice that across all developing countries, where when they do migrate to an English speaking country, it is a barrier towards higher paying jobs for them just because of communication. It's as simple as that. And programming languages like Java, Python, everything else is written in English. So it's already a barrier towards countries that don't have English as their first language. So it's an addition on top of that, of their main language, and they're already struggling to learn maths and science, and then to have to learn a programming language that's in another language. So that is one of the reasons why I firmly believe that English is not the best language, but it's a language that is like a tool. It's just like every other tool that allows them to build more skills. And so I wanted to teach English in Africa because it has the lowest rates of girls enrolled in primary school and high school across the world. Across the world, you see that primary and secondary education enrollment in girls is the lowest compared to, say, Europe, Eastern Europe, South America, and that's where I wanted to target. I really wanted to give them a skill, a tool that would allow them to get out of the poverty of cycle, essentially. And so the maths and science books that I've used, that I've purchased from the grant, thank you, is targeted at grades 5 to 8, because I believe that it is at that age when we start wondering about what we want to be. This is the age of curiosity and wonder. And I think that at a very young age, you can encourage them and allow them to realize that careers don't have gender. It's at an early age where you can say you can do whatever you want to do. You can be a doctor or you can be an astronaut. And there's nothing that says that you can't be a particular career. And so that's why I targeted grade 5s to 8, because they're at that age where they're curious about everything. They're curious about science and math and everything, and then encouraging that with, you can do anything.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Annie. And I wanted to point out, you also have taught English. You taught English in Europe for a while too, right? Before your PhD?
Yes. So jumping straight from having no teaching English skills, because I basically just thought, well, I want to teach English, but I don't have any experience in teaching English. So I went on a bit of a freelance and I went to Germany, and there I taught English to German students. And so I picked up German, and then I taught mainly English. So I pretended that I didn't know any German, but I had to learn a lot of German in order to try to get that the class rolling. But basically I pretended that I didn't speak any German and then taught them just English. And so it worked really well. And I feel like I'm equipped with some skills. And that's when I was planning to go to South America, to Kenya, and finally teach English in Kenya. But I got offered the scholarship last March, just in time, because I was about to go in May. And that's something that is still on my to-do list. It's definitely going to be later on, maybe perhaps after my PhD, when I have a little bit of like a 6-month or a year break. It's definitely on the to-do list.
Yeah, it worked out well, the timing, because COVID would have made coming back to Australia really difficult if you had gone to Sydney. So that's a good thing. I know I'm being conscious of time as well, Niamh, and if there were any questions from our audience, please do go ahead and jump in with those. But I had one more question I wanted to ask all of the fellows. And I think I'll start with Olly with this one. And what I want to hear from all of you is, you're all doing these incredible science degrees. You're undertaking a PhD, which is the highest level of a science degree you can do. And you've studied science until this time to get into this degree. But I want to know if it was easy for you, if you always, were good at science and good at math and got A's in school. And, did you find academia easy? Did you find study easy? And if not, how did you overcome those challenges? So I'm starting with Olly.
So I found it easy up to a point, and then suddenly started finding it very difficult. So I was one of those kids in school that liked homework. So I sort of sailed through school, very much loved. I just loved everything about school. I had a great time. Was in all the extracurriculars, loved biology. But then when I did my, at 18, I did my exams. I did the International Baccalaureate, and I did worse than I was expecting. And it was the biggest hit I've ever had. And then every exam period throughout my undergraduate degree and throughout my master's degree until the very last one, I consistently did worse than expected. And I found that up to a certain point, I have an awful memory retention, and the stress of exams and the way, at least the way zoology was taught to me, it was you cram it in and then you just vomit it in an exam, and it really didn't work with me, and I really struggled. So when I was doing my bachelor's, I wanted nothing more. I thought, I can't do this. I like doing coursework, but apparently I'm not fit for science because I can't remember different amino acids on instant recall. This isn't for me. So I wanted to go into science media, which is why I did the book and things. And then a master's degree at the Natural History Museum opened up, and I was like, that sounds so cool, I'll try. And again, I struggled with the exams, but going to Madagascar, I saw, wait, zoology doesn't have to be all textbooks. It's not all textbooks. It's practical as well. And I think practicality side of zoology is what kept me in it. Because even now in my PhD, my future in academia is uncertain, because I struggle with, as you said, Emily, I think you said it should be about competing ideas, not competing people. And I struggle with that side of it. And I struggle with, being able to have confidence in what I know, especially if someone meets me suddenly and is like, what do you study? Tell me all your statistical analysis. And I sort of freak out at the time. But I do like writing. And so if I can have the time and the space to just be able to present my science with warning and in a way, sort of with my visual content, then I really love it.
Yeah, and I'm glad you persisted, and I think that was a nice route to sort of step into media and museums and be so excited about the outcome of the master's to be willing to take on the testing again. How about you, Nneka? You've had, it would be a pretty intensive program to go through a medical degree, I imagine.
I think we've just lost Nneka's connection, have we?
Yeah, I think so. So maybe we'll come back.
We're going to go to Annie next.
Yeah. Well, Annie, you know the question, but for you, especially because you're doing some pretty, coding intensive, technology intensive, artificial intelligence techniques, are those sorts of things, maths and coding, do they come easy to you, or what's that been like for you?
Absolutely not. So I really struggle with maths, but it's something that I absolutely love. It has been very challenging, but I enjoy research. I enjoy the pursuit of pure knowledge, and I think that I've been very fortunate to have a really supportive mum who's basically encouraged me the entire time to chase whatever I feel. And I have changed disciplines, so it's okay to change your mind. There's nobody says that, you know, at age 10 you have to decide on what you want to be for the rest of your life. You can change your mind as many times as you like. So I've changed disciplines probably about 5 times, and I think that's one of the scariest things that young people go through in particularly our high school system, where we're like, you have to make up your mind, you have to know exactly what you want to do at university. It's not the case at all. You can go through university and then decide, look, this is not what I thought it was, because I do know people who go through their bachelor's, she did nursing, and at the end of it she was like, it's not for me, it's not what I want to actually do, and then go on to do something else. So it's perfectly fine to experiment. It's perfectly fine to go, look, I want to do this, go chase it, and then if it's not what you want to be, find another challenge that you're really inspired to figure out.
Yeah, thanks, Annie. I that's been my path as well. It's been very roundabout and changing directions, but I think that's an important message for youth, is that you don't have to know, and those decisions don't have to have so much pressure behind them. The decision you make in year 10 or year 12 or after your bachelor's, just keep taking those steps and following the passions, and it'll be okay, maybe. How about you, Nneka? Your path seems pretty straight, always following the health direction, but did you find that pathway easy? Were you always, a good student and clearly headed for medical school, or what was your path like? Sorry, you're still muted, Nneka. We can see you though, and you're back, but we can't hear you yet.
You can hear me now, right? Okay, thank you. Right, so my path hasn't always been smooth, really, but
and neither has the technology, unfortunately.
No, maybe if we hang on.
I have this buzzword. So I mean, like, coming from a country, Nigeria. First of all, one of those are. Can you hear me now?
You've dropped out a little bit again, Nneka, but we can hear you. It's
but
just
you
patchy.
Can hear me now.
We can hear you clearly now. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So like I said, yeah. So coming from a place where you have to prove yourself, you don't have all of the materials you need to work. Like, for example, now I'm doing an online PhD, and I have access to power only 6 hours in 24 hours. So that's challenging. Yes. So that's challenging. And so that will mean that I have to be innovative. I have to look for a way out. So I have to spend extra to get power. So, and growing up, it has always also been like that. I think my first stint was with engineering. I really wanted to become a chemical engineer. And at some point, I wanted to be a lawyer. But of course, I had older ones so I've got 2 older ones who are lawyers, and growing up, I had worked with them or worked for them in their chambers, and I developed the interest. But they told me, they said, hell no, you can't be a lawyer. You can't be an engineer. Go do something else. Right. So it hasn't always been smooth. And then I had to change, just like Annie was saying, that, look, it doesn't matter. You could study something and then you realize that this is not for you. But in my own case, I hadn't gone far, and it wasn't me making that choice, but it was my older ones making the choice for me to say, oh no, we think you do better being a doctor. And yeah, so I went on to study medicine. Even studying medicine wasn't really smooth. There were times that I was disappointed with my performance. And so that was when I started saying, look, I need to be my own validator. I don't need somebody else to tell me you're not doing it okay and all of that. I need to be my own cheerleader. And there were moments I failed some exams. I didn't do well, but I picked up myself and, and then the most challenging is the fact that you have to raise a family, by my culture here, I just have to juggle that. I remember then in medical school, I already had 2 children. Oh, I already had one. I was pregnant for the other. And then my lecturer for pediatrics looks at me. She is a lady, by the way. And then she talked down on me. And she told me those very hurting words. Those, she just wasn't there for me. And she said, look, I know you're going to fail. I don't know why you're wasting your time here. You will fail. And it was a huge challenge for me. I went back to my room. I told myself, I said, look, I'm not going to lose my baby. My baby is going to leave, and I'm not going to fail these exams, whatever it will take me. And I worked very hard, really, really taxing myself. I worked very hard. At the end of that exam, I actually felt ill and I had a little bit of complications with my pregnancy. But at the end of the day, I had my baby, I had my exams. Then I went back to her to say, thank you for helping to push me, even though you did it negatively, but you pushed me to work hard. And here I am today. I passed my exams. I guess maybe she didn't remember what she told me, but, it made an impression on me. And right after that, I still had to work even harder to make sure that I stay tops in, my class and all of that. And coming to do PhD, yes. So there's a lot of calculations, a lot of statistics and all of that. But like, I would always encourage myself, look, you can do it. You can do it. Just move on. And it's beautiful studying in Australia, where you can ask for extra support, extra help. You can say, oh no, I'm not getting it okay with all of this. I need support. Like, for example, when I had to do my coursework, I don't know what R is, but out of curiosity, I chose R. And I didn't do well, but I just told my supervisor, I said, I didn't do well, but I think I want to do it again. I need to know it. She was surprised. She said, would you want to go through it again? I said, yes, I would want to go through it again. So for me, I am the final validator of my work, of my person, of what I do. So that has kept me going on. And that's what I tell most young girls who naturally would want to succumb to peer pressure. I said, look, what you're doing, do you like what you're doing? What benefit will it be to you? Validate yourself first before you wait for the validation of a friend, a peer or something like that. So that's how it has always been for me. Thank you.
Amazing. I think that hearing each of you, the way that you've progressed from your studies through to your careers and what you're doing now is really inspiring. It's been good to hear, Annie, how you transitioned from different things until you found your niche. And Nneka, I'm sure many of us can relate, but maybe not quite so much to how many people were doubters throughout our pursuit of science. And then also, Olly, I really, your story about resonated with me about how traditional exams and traditional metrics are really flawed, and they only suit a very particular type of person and a way of learning. And that is firmly why I believe we need more diversity in science, so that we stop being so one-sided in how we measure success or how and who we think is successful, because it just ends up narrowing the lens of views that we have as input. We are a little bit over time, so I think it's time to wrap up. We did have one question about who your favorite scientist is and why, but maybe we can comment on the Facebook link afterwards. And a reminder to everybody that this will be available on YouTube, and the whole That's What I Call Science team have been just loving all of the inspiring and wholesome vibes. So I think we're going to try and cut little highlight excerpts as well to share with people, because there's just so many little pearls of absolute wisdom and inspiration. And I would just like to really thank all of you for making the time to dial in, and for sharing your story so vulnerably and so honestly with us. Emily, anything to add from you?
No, just like, I mean, just like you, Niamh, yeah, like I said, I find these women absolutely amazing and inspiring, and I love hearing their stories. And I noticed across all of them, there was a theme of not being afraid of failure, being willing to take on those challenges and not being afraid to fail in them. And when you do fail, because we all do, picking yourself back up and using, you know, your inspiration from within yourself and your confidence within yourself, and also using mentorship and the people around you to find that strength to get back up when you've been knocked down. And I'm so excited for you guys to connect with more youth, girls and boys, to share your stories with them, and to see them engage with science or with whatever challenges are in their pathway. Yeah. Oh, and I want to remind people that you can hear from our fellows again on March 8th. They'll be doing some interviews with ABC Radio for International Women's Day. And that week on Thursday, we have our Science in the Pub event where they'll be presenting, and you can, if you're here in Hobart anyway, you can meet them in the pub at 6 o'clock at the Black Buffalo in North Hobart.
Great, thank you. And I would just like to wrap up with that. Thank you to each of our fellows. Thank you to Emily for introducing me to them and to, you know, creating such a worthwhile program. And I'd also like to say that this event is part of a series of events that That's What I Call Science are doing this year to celebrate inspiring women, and it is supported by a National Science Week seed grant from the Tasmanian Inspiring Australia Committee. So thank you for that, and more from this space in the future. And for now, that's it. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
For having us. Thank you, and bye-bye.
And have a good day, Nneka. Thanks again for tuning in.
Yeah. Okay. So, Emily,